Launchpad. And now, here's Johnny.
Hey, it's Johnny Rocket here at the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, always launching ideas in your direction, the Northwest only rock and roll libertarian radio show. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Kurt Nelson.
What up?
My voice of reason, the beautiful Heather Nixon.
Hello, how are you? I'm giving Kurt my honey.
Oh, that's...
She's giving you her hiney.
Nice.
It's okay with you if I give Kurt my hiney?
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, whatevs.
It's golden.
We're all friends, right?
Yeah, you know, keep it in the family.
Yeah, Sharon, I like. It's all good.
Yeah, but what would
Whatever.
Sharon think? Sharon might go, no.
Sharon
No,
probably,
Sharon's
she
all
probably
about
didn't even give a
Sharon.
shit.
Sharon's all about Sharon.
Yeah, she's that's her name. That's what she does.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
mandatory.
Right.
Anyways, though, we're here with Saint Addis. Explosion, bam!
Cat to work today. That was a purring cat.
Yeah.
And you know why I love Paul? He hooked me up with Duran Duran tickets.
Yes.
Duran.
Oh, by the
Love
way,
Duran.
so Mr. Addis, again,
Yes.
we're going to say Saint Addis, not only has hooked us up with Steely Dan tickets
Dan.
for next Thursday now, she was really about the Duran Duran.
Yeah, well, I saw
And
that on
I saw,
Facebook.
I know Hungry Like a Wolf. That's the only release song I know about.
I
Yeah.
know.
Did you see the pictures of me in the height of my
I
Durani
did.
days?
Duranimal.
Durani.
You called it. Well, yeah, that
Yeah,
was great.
Duranimal.
Yeah, I'd seen some of Heather's posts that she was just all about. In fact, that's how I found out they were even coming to the fair in Washington. Was Heather had posted about it? I thought, oh my gosh, Duran Duran, they're coming to Washington State. I love those guys.
Well,
It might be the last time they're going to keel over any minute.
Well, just because, they say, oh, this is our last concert.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, Motley Crue last year said, oh, this is our last concert. And guess what? They're going to be at the Tacoma Dome.
The Rolling
you,
Stones are
Motley
still.
Crue.
The Rolling Stones are on tour right now. The Zip Code tour. They were just played in Atlanta a couple weeks
Really?
ago. Yeah.
Anyway, so what we do here in the third segment is we have a section called Rocket Fire. And what we do on Rocket Fire is we're going to ask you a series of 10 questions. These are all politically related. And if you can answer these questions within 30 to 60 seconds, some
Johnny
overtime
will give you
is-
$1,000.
I will give you a ticket to Washington State. So, give you some free airfare. So, you ready to play? Rocket Fire!
There we go. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Question 1. The U.S. dollar has lost over 95% of its value since the Federal Reserve was created. The U.S. national debt is 5,000 times larger than it was when the Federal Reserve was created. Is there any justification why the Federal Reserve should continue to issue its currency?
Well, good question. So my 30 to 60 second answer is that I think there are better ways to do it than the system we have today. Mm-hmm. I'm no economist, but I would say that I think the Congress should have without the private banks who are part of the Federal Reserve. It's not federal. They don't really have a full reserve. It's fractionally reserved. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's the right setup for a sovereign nation. I think that our Congress, who represent the people, should handle the coining and setting the currency and all that stuff that should be done by the people and the representatives of the people, not by private bankers. So I think the system is messed up the way it is, and it's partly why it's devaluing the currency. So yeah, we do need to have
Because they can print
better.
more money, right?
Right. Yeah.
Question 2.
Why have we allowed the too big to fail banks to become even larger?
Well, I think when you say we, you're talking about
The people. The people.
Yeah, and the legislators who bail them out and say they're too big to fail. The ones who said it, because the people.
There
probably
is
don't think
people
they're too
out
big.
there. Yeah, there's people who actually believe that.
Yeah, so I think that the reason is because the people who are saying that, the ones who in Congress said we got to bail these people out and give them the $700 billion or whatever,
Right.
they are the ones that are pocketing funds from the people in the banking industry, and so I don't think that's a good system. I don't think the people regulating them, making the laws, and allowing them to take our tax money to bail them out when they make bad decisions should in any way be associated with them, like having people who are running Goldman Sachs to be the treasurer or secretary or whatever. So I think it's a crony system that is just taking our money and giving it to people who really don't deserve it.
Right on.
Question 3.
Why do you think politicians think it's a good idea for the military to arrest American citizens and detain them without trial when they're a suspect in an investigation of terror?
So this is from the NDAA, the section that allows indefinite detention without due process. First of all, the military, I believe does have a right to do some law enforcement activity in the U.S. The posse comitatus that a lot of people talk about was really more about the people in the South after the Civil War, the local people trying to get the military to come in and make them do their stuff. And so that was what that was more about, not that they don't have a right to do it if it's necessary. But I don't think the indefinite detention without due process, that's unconstitutional.
And we were talking about due process.
Yeah,
right.
that makes
That's the big catch.
Yeah, the NDA is totally unconstitutional and it's criminal.
Question 4.
What could go wrong with legally treating marijuana like alcohol with similar age and use restrictions?
I don't think anything more harmful than what we have today. So I think alcohol is more toxic to the body. I think it causes more problems than marijuana. So I don't think you'd have any greater negative effects than you have today with alcohol.
Question 5.
Do you think prohibition of any kind is a good idea?
Well, I am not a prohibitionist, so I do think we should decriminalize marijuana. I think that prohibition does cause black markets and other harmful effects in the community, as you mentioned. So, yes, I'm definitely for decriminalizing marijuana.
Question 6.
Do you think we could change our country to a more liberty-minded society through political parties, or do you think we must fall first?
I think that change often comes after catastrophic crises. So unfortunately, that is the way things happen a lot of times in history. However, in our democratic society or our republic, there are means to change the system. And I think the problem with politics right now is that there's a lot of moneyed influences that are causing the system not to work properly.
Right on.
And so people don't have a voice. We're more of an oligarchy now, which is much harder to change.
Question 7.
Did you celebrate the Supreme Court decision that gays have the right to marry in all 50 states? Or do you think it's an overreaching of the government to get involved?
I think, well, as far as did I celebrate, I mean, I'm not homosexual, so it didn't change anything for me in my life. Did I feel happy for the people who have been working hard to get that kind of freedom? I felt I could feel happy for them that they got a goal that they had strived for. However, I think that the decision wasn't based on a constitutional basis. I think that the judicial branch had an overreach, and I think that they really, it was a big hit to liberty and our constitutional principles in this country. So it's kind of a sad day in that sense for the Constitution.
Question 8.
The U.S. Constitution is based on checks and balances. The president can veto legislation, etc. The question is, who checks the judicial branch?
Well, the judicial branch is not elected. They really don't have. They're supposed to just have a legal judgment on things the cases that come before them. So that's the problem with the Supreme Court is they really don't have a place to go for them to be told they're wrong.
Right on.
Question 9.
Has socialism or any other forms of collectivism ever worked anywhere in the world?
Well, collectivism, I think, at a local level is okay. In the sense of if you have co-ops where farmers do things together and sell their stuff together.
Like a traditional economy.
Right.
On a very small level. Right?
So I think collectivism is okay as far as the people that are involved in collecting themselves are all voluntarily doing so. Mm-hmm. So as long as they're not being forced to be in a collective, then it's okay at a local level.
Question 10.
What would be your ideal tax system, if any, that would be implemented on a federal level?
Well, I think what we had before the income tax was put in place, I think that was around 1913 or so. And so I think some of the business that the government does, tariffs and things on that kind of commerce that the government does, I think can, give you the revenue that you need. And one of the problems we have today is if you cut off the revenue, there's a lot of programs and agencies that will go unfunded, and people have become used to those benefits and things, and those agencies, and they're bloated with the people, the employees. So I think that income tax, I don't agree with the idea of income tax to begin with. So I think we could do without that. And I think just having the tariffs and things like we had before 1913, a system where we could limit the government to do what it's supposed to do at a federal level and have the revenue. We could still have the revenues that we need to do that.
Bonus question.
Does the government create jobs?
The government does not create jobs. I can do that in 30 seconds. The government does not create jobs.
Yes, it can, but it doesn't create value or wealth.
It can it can appoint people to do things.
Exactly.
And pay them. But yeah, so in that sense, it can give you a job, a position that's open. It can hire you to do something and pay you.
Right.
But it's only, they're doing
They're not really
themselves.
creating wealth.
Right. It's for their own purposes, not,
Exactly. Rocket fire! Yeah! Paul Addis! Yeah! So, So before we left on the first segment, we were talking about gay
Second
wedding.
segment.
We were talking second segment. We were talking about Confederate flags and gay wedding cakes and fucking gay people. I guess I don't know. Paul, so you were going to talk more about.
Yeah. Well, there were actually a few things we were talking about there. I mean,
And I don't have a problem with gay people. I was just saying, fucking gay people.
So,
in that sense.
I was also, when we got onto I was mentioning Michael Scott. And I want to finish at that point real quick before we got into the Confederate flag.
Sure.
And then later on into the gay marriage ruling. But we were talking about Blue Republican, how it was saying everybody could do it. Well, Michael Scott was going to say is big into TV media, that kind of thing. So he wanted to put his talents in that way to help Blue Republican. So hopefully that'll be coming up soon. But I know he's got a lot going on in that area. I think he's putting together some new stuff, new platform for media stuff for libertarian ideas. So, and hopefully maybe even you guys could work with him at something like that.
Absolutely.
Because you
That'd
guys
be
are
awesome.
into that kind of thing. So anyway, that was kind of the point there that I was getting at. But then we got into the Confederate flag. And let me say this. Okay, so I am a white Southerner. I was born and raised in Georgia. Now, I've lived all over, traveled all over. So
Racist?
I've been around. But
You're racist.
No, actually, I'm not, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
No,
Good to know.
Give it up for Paul Addis. He's not racist.
Non-racist Paul Addis.
I hate to disappoint all those people in Hollywood that make the TVs and movies that say that any white person, any white guy with
Well,
a
you got
Southern
an accent. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course I do. And anybody, if you watch the movies and TV, any white guy with a Southern accent is stupid.
But you have the draw,
racist.
too. You're like, and I'm going to tell you another thing. But it's true, though, man.
So that's where I'm from. That's my heritage.
Right.
I have Southern heritage. So when it comes to the Confederate flag, though, I understand the history of the South, and I know that the Civil War was about a lot more things than slavery. However, I will say there was national debate at the time of whether or not states would be free or be slave states. And of course, in the South, they were going to be the slave states. In the North, it was the people were voting to be free states. So even when Texas came in, there was a lot of debate about, was Texas going to be a free state or a slave state?
Sure.
And the Mason-Dixon line is about south of it, slave, north of it, free. So when you had things like the Underground Railroad, people were going in the Underground Railroad from the South to the North. There's a reason for that. Nobody was going from the North to the South in the Underground Railroad. So, and again, I know people will bring up the fact that, well, the North had the biggest slave graveyard was in the North, so they had slaves in the North, whatever. Speaking to that, if that were true, if the North was just as much into slavery as the South, when the North won the Civil War, then the whole United States would have been slave, not free, because the North won. And if they were just as much for slavery as the South, they would have imposed their will on the whole country. So obviously, the North was not as much for slavery as the South was.
Yes,
so
that's true.
So the point being, I can see why people correlate the Southern Confederate battle flag of that flag, the rebel flag, with slavery. Not just because they don't know their history, but because the South was more predominantly in favor of slavery than the North was. That's a historical fact.
That's
even
true.
though there were some slavery, then those historical
And
precedents I mentioned.
there was states with slaves during the Civil War.
Right. So I can see why people would be offended by that. I understand that. I don't think they're ignorant because they're offended by the Confederate flag. However, to me, it's sometimes, I heard Andrew Young, who was ambassador to the UN, was mayor of Atlanta, was African-American civil rights leader. He was talking the other day on TV, on the news, talking about how, a bigger problem for the black community is the black on black violence. Like 80% of blacks who died at the hands of other blacks. And so this Confederate flag brouhaha is just a distraction, and they really shouldn't spend a lot of time on it. And I think he's got a point there. So I don't begrudge anybody who wants to say something. They got First Amendment, freedom of speech, they can say what they want. I don't think the government should come in and try and ban people's freedom of speech to not be able to fly the flag. And I think that, sometimes our PC society can get so wrapped around the axle on issues like this that we don't see more of the real problem.
So do you think that it should be up to the people of whichever state to decide if the flag should even be flown from a government or a public building then? Up to the people?
Sure. Yes, I do. I do believe that. I do believe that's what we vote for representatives to make those legislative decisions at the state level. That would be a 10th Amendment issue that's left to the states. So if you're in a state and you're in a district where your person that's representing you voted to put the flag up, whether it won or not, and you didn't like that idea, you could vote for another person the next next time. And vice versa, if you wanted it up and there was a candidate that was running and said, I'm going to try and put it back up on the poll, and you liked that, you could vote for them. Hopefully you've got better things to vote on.
They
for
don't.
your
Come on,
They don't, Paul.
that,
They
but,
don't.
Good point,
If that's
Heather.
your thing, then
Yeah.
you could vote on that, and that's what the democratic process is all about.
And I also agree, but I don't think it's up to the federal government. Now, even though they're not really saying it now, it is going to go there. I'm telling you, it's going to go there. Where the next step is going to be where the federal government bans things. They're going to start to ban things. That's what scares the shit out of me. Because everyone's like, oh, they can't do that. Well, they will.
Yeah,
they will.
This government, I wouldn't put much past them.
Yeah,
at this
exactly.
point.
They're gonna ban it. They're gonna try to, anyways. And so, a private business. So, if Walmart wants to be a bunch of dickheads and ban the Dukes of Hazzard toys, by all means,
Absolutely.
let
They
them
have the right to
fucking
do
do
so.
it.
I
They
love
have the
the
right
Dukes
to
of
do it.
Hazzard show.
Doesn't mean I like it. Doesn't mean like I lived in the South. I said I've seen a lot of black people who are waving the Confederate flag around. They didn't look at it as a racist issue. They looked at it as, this is my heritage. This is what I'm about. I've seen black guys I've met them. Alabama, you can't go like more
Okay, I'm gonna start talking shit about Alabama. You've talked a lot of shit in the past.
I know, but I'm saying though, but there was people I have met personally that waved that flag around, black guys, and they were cool. They were all about it. They thought it was
but
cool.
you can understand why some African Americans might be offended by
Sure.
the symbol of the Southern Confederacy.
I just don't think it's historically an accurate depiction of the South.
But the South was of the South.
Of
they
course,
were the ones that
they
clung
were
to the
more
slavery.
slave-oriented than the North. I understand. That's a no-brainer. But I am
It's
still
the
saying the
association,
North...
guilty by association.
Right, but the North still had slave states.
Right.
And so I don't buy it. It's kind
But
of
their
like...
people
It
voted
was
to
more
be
of an...
free.
It was an economic thing that turned into a slave war.
It was sort of a red state, blue state lie.
Right, but
Yeah.
exactly, the South needed the slaves to keep their economy going if they lost their slaves.
Yes.
But is this what the flag stands for?
No.
No. I'm not saying that's
It
what it's
didn't.
saying. I'm just saying it's, number one, it was a representation of the Southern Confederacy.
Right.
Number two, the South did vote to keep the slaves and the North voted to be free. That's why we had, that national debate. That's why when the North won, the United States didn't become slave because
Sure,
the
but-
North didn't impose that on the rest of
Right.
the country, whereas the South wanted to impose that on the entire Confederacy.
But that wasn't the only thing they stood for.
No, it wasn't. I'm just saying there's that association. So
Sure.
if you're an African American, that would be a very big thing to you.
Sure.
And so it's understandable. I don't think it's out of ignorance. I think it's understandable that they
Right.
would see that symbol. They wouldn't care so much about even if they know about the economic parts of the Civil War, the
Right.
cause of it, that wouldn't matter to them as much as it would the fact that, as we just mentioned, the history of slavery in the South. So I can understand that. And the thing with me is I grew up in the South, but I grew up in majority black communities. Like when I grew up in Macon, Georgia, and the South side of Atlanta, we were like 90%
Sure.
black. When in second grade, I was the only white person in my class. Even the teacher was black. So, everybody I knew was black pretty much. So I didn't see that symbol very often in my neighborhoods.
Oh, I don't
But
see
growing
you
up-
as the president of the NAACP either.
No. But so yeah, I mean,
Just
so,
wait, I
yeah.
got a can of spray paint.
Come on.
A little
that's the
spray
thing.
tan.
So,
weave.
Paul,
Yeah, and that's why I like most people I know, I don't judge people by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. So
No, and I agree. And I think
you
that's,
know,
that's
and-
the most fundamental thing, Paul. And I know you're a good person, and
Yeah,
that's what it's about. Go ahead.
right.
So, Paul, when you were growing up, did you were you the brunt of any racism coming back your direction?
Sure. I mean, it was kids, so yeah. I mean,
You're in a predominantly black area.
yeah, I remember. Once I remember specifically getting beat up because I was white, but that was just kids. Kids.
It's ignorance.
Do stuff, crazy stuff. Like kids are mean, you know. So, but some of these were my friends that beat me up. You know how it is with kids.
Well, yeah, and it's also
you know.
the kids it's what they're taught,
Right.
So
I remember that, but at the same time, I remember most of my friends that grew up. Everybody I knew pretty much was black. So good and bad. My friends and my enemies were everybody was black.
Wow.
So anyway, yeah. I felt that, but I never felt the systemic hatred and racism.
Right.
I never felt that because I am white. And so, I never felt like I wasn't getting a loan for a car or anything
Right.
because I was white.
it was more just hate or whatever, or not hate because we're talking kids at this point,
ignorance and difference
ignorance.
and
Right. It's
not
no
understanding.
different than someone making, you wear glasses or.
Yeah, right. Kids are mean no matter what you're
Right.
thinking. That just was my thing. I was white, they were black.
That was your
so-
gig. Paul, you bring a great point because you kind of look at it from a more of a humanitarian side.
Well,
politics
you kind
should
of
be
have to
about
when you're a
people.
saint. It's
yeah.
part of sainthood.
Sainthood.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's intellectually dishonest not to acknowledge your history, good and bad. And,
Right.
and that's one of the reasons people have a problem with people banning the flag and all, is that they're kind of ignoring all of the history by focusing on one part of the history. I understand that too.
Right, exactly. Well, and here's one thing that Kevin Gutzman said. It wasn't a civil war because the South did not want to take over the North.
Right.
And he breaks up a great point.
That's a great point.
The right to secede.
Exactly. And that's really, and it's true. And in my opinion, hell, it would be a bunch of Southern fucking Democrats running the goddamn South. But it would have been bad. It would have been really bad. But they had the right to secede. They did, in my opinion.
Even now, there are groups in Washington State that want to split the state in half. There's a couple of groups, I think, in California want to split that state up in different ways. So I think the idea of breaking up and seceding type spirit is kind of raising its head around the country at times. People just get upset. They don't want to live with the other group. So, yeah, I mean, I think they have the right to secede, and unhappy that growing up in Georgia, I'm happy I was part of the United States of America. I'm very proud to be. So, yeah.
Good.
In the end,
I'm glad we know you, and I'm glad you're here with us. And that's all that
glad
matters.
to be here.
And Mr. St. Addis, Paul St. Addis, what is some of your websites you'd like to promote here while you're selfishly here talking about the Blue Republican?
Well, we did mention Blue Republican, so you can go to bluerepublican.org. You can see what we're about. If you'd like to make a difference and not just make a point in the liberty movement, then you probably need to check us out. And I think we can be a platform for you that you can use to promote liberty. And like we said, be political entrepreneur in the liberty realm. And also, again, if you're in Washington State, we've got the lpwa.org, which is the Libertarian Party of Washington. And there's a lot of stuff there about the candidates we're running. We're starting to grow county chapters. So especially if you are in a county that doesn't have a county chapter for the Libertarian Party, it would be good for you to contact the lpwa.org and let them know that you're interested, because, again, you will have the freedom to do what you want for liberty in your area. And so those are a couple, bluerepublican.org and lpwa.org, if you are interested in getting involved in supporting and promoting liberty, either nationally or here in Washington with lpwa.org.
Give it up for Paul! Paul, we love you very much, man. Thank you so much for the Kentucky Fried Chicken. You are our
Thank you for being here.
Family,
Fuck you,
man.
Johnny. Thank you for being here, Paul.
Your family,
We
man.
don't just love you for tickets and chicken.
No, man, I love being
Tickets
here. You
and
guys are the
chicken are
best.
cool too,
And
though,
let
man.
me say this about the launch pad. This is my fourth time being here. I was, last year ago.
Way back, yeah.
I was on it, and I'm going to tell you what, you guys. This show is getting really tight. I mean, you guys have evolved and are really making it happen. And I mean, the guests you have on, the new segments you have, the way you're editing, the way you're putting the show together, the way you entertain, your chemistry is still as good as it always has. Along with now, you're really ramping it up to the next level. So I want to just give you guys kudos for all you're doing, because in the end, you're supporting liberty like the rest of us, and you're doing it in a way nobody else is doing it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
man.
Promised myself I wasn't going to cry.
That was awesome, man. Paul, you are one of the greatest people we know, and we're honored to have
Truly,
you
thank
here.
you. Truly.
Seriously, you are. Anyway, so we're honored to have you, St. Addis, and keep up with him and check him out at bluerepublican.org. Awesome. Great. Thank you very much for coming here. This is Johnny Rocket here at the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, always launching ideas in your direction, the Northwest's only rock and roll libertarian radio show. I am here with my co-host, Mr. Kurt Nelson.
Thank you, Johnny. Hey, everybody. Don't forget to check out the Johnny Rocket Launchpad on libertymovementradio.com. Fridays and Monday, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and various times on LRN.FM. Airs the podcast randomly. So check us out there.
Liberty Radio Network. And my beautiful co-host, the beautiful Heather Nixon.
Well, thank you, Johnny. And if you want to do a good thing, then look into LifeSpring Ministries and help our friend Paul out. 100% of the money you donate goes to the children in Africa. Get your wallet out and donate. $5, $10, or even $100. Your money will not be wasted through bureaucracies. Every dime of your money will help a needy child. Visit LifespringAfrica.com.
And And this is Johnny Rocket here at the Johnny Rocket Launchpad. Make sure you check out the JohnnyRocketLaunchpad.com. And this is Johnny Rocket. We have Band of the Week. Stick around. Rock and roll.